This podcast replay is brought to you by Moody's Dental, the implant and Invisalign experts. Take advantage of your insurance benefits for 2019 before the year runs out and they're all gone. Call 305-821-0231. Visit Moody'sDental.com.
Promised you Brody Miller, kind enough to join us from The Athletic, does an excellent job of covering LSU. You could follow him on Twitter at Brody A. Miller as we start to focus in on the quarterbacks. And Brody, good afternoon, my man. Thank you for joining us once again, my friend.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. How's life on your end?
Oh, life is good. My brother, we're in Miami. You know, we got Miami weather, you know, so we can't complain here. You know, for us, winter is like 65, you know. it's not a bad thing.
I'm with you.
All right, so as we...
I know it's a little chilly in Atlanta, and I'm not having it.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. And one of the things we're doing now, obviously, because the Dolphins are going to be looking for a quarterback, although I don't think they're going to be able to get Joe Burrow when it's all said and done, because I think the Ohio kid will be playing in Cincinnati when it's all said and done. But we want to focus on a lot of the quarterbacks in the draft, and we'll talk a little bit about Joe Burrow. First of all, when did you see the transformation? Because he was not consistent before he got there to LSU. He wasn't a guy that was dependable. So there were question marks with Joe Burrow. Talk a little bit about that development and how he took that next step.
Yeah, I think you first started seeing the development the last 3 or 4 games of the 2018 season. I think something kind of clicked right after the Arkansas game, and then after that they went into the Rice game, and all of a sudden you started seeing him open up a bit more. You started seeing him a little more kind of fluid in the offense suited him. And then the Texas A&M game, well, everyone will remember the 7 overtimes and LSU losing. I think actually what I remember that game is that was the first time you really saw LSU unleash Joe Burrow. They let him run for over 100 yards. They spread the ball out more and didn't try to max protect, which is one of the main problems last year. So I think you really started seeing what he could do the last 3 games, because then he threw for about almost 400 yards in the Fiesta Bowl. But then you go into this season, and I think the key is it was this kind of perfect storm of, all right, Joe Burrow finally had a full off season in Baton Rouge, which he always talks about how important that is, because he was only there about a month before the season started last year, so he didn't have any connection with his receivers. He was learning this new offense. He was under center for the first time, and so he finally had a full off season, just work with his receivers at just ridiculous lengths, just nonstop. So you start there. Then you have this new offense with the passing game coordinator Joe Brody and this new scheme that really opens up the offense more and lets Joe Burrow be in control more, which is what he's really good at. And then you add that in with all the scheme, the timing, and then these receivers like Jamar Chase, who won the Blitnikoff, and Terrace Marshall and Justin Jefferson. They all took a leap this season and really became more 3 of the best receivers in the country. So I just think it was this kind of perfect storm of scheme, experience, and then the talent around him, and that's really what's made Joe Burrow transform into the best quarterback in college football.
So, leadership-wise, obviously, dude, when I saw that Heisman speech, I'm sure every mother in the world said, okay, you can marry my daughter right now. And for me personally, I saw a kid that obviously had some pretty good upbringing, had some people that influenced him, whether it was siblings or parents or coaches or whatever, but he has a lot of values, and I really like that a lot about the kid. Talk to me a little bit about leadership and how he handles his teammates and how they gravitate to him? Do they play hard for him?
They absolutely do. And I think it took a little time to get there. I don't think it's something that happened overnight or happened right when he first got here. I think his first few months there, it was really more of he just kind of put his head down and worked, didn't try to be the guy talking to everybody, didn't try to force it. But now he's at a point where, and I think part of it goes with how well he's playing, but I mean, that he is in command of that entire football operations building. I mean, everybody, what he does, people follow, and now everybody trusts him. So, and he has this kind of, mix of cocky toughness, and he's a guy who takes massive hits and just gets back up and talks a little trash to the guy. He's the guy who predicted before the Texas game, he turned to his offensive lineman and said, all right, I'm going to throw for 400 yards on them after he saw them shoot the cannon through his jersey on College game day. He's just kind of got that kind of ridiculous toughness and swagger that elevates it, that really makes people fall behind him more. And you go back to some games like last year, the Georgia game where he ran in 2 different goal line touchdowns and ran on the bench and beat his chest screaming, "This is my effing house." Or you go to the Texas A&M 7 overtime game where he played so hard that his body literally fainted in the locker room. And there's these things that just kind of, or the massive hit. Remember the blindside hit he took against UCF where he was down for a minute, and then he went back up and threw for another 300 yards after that. So I just think he has all these moments that everybody would follow that guy. He's the hardest worker on the team. He's the guy, I like to call him like the third offensive coordinator, because he's so involved in that offense that he's actually the one coaching the rest of the team on it. So I think it's fascinating to watch his leadership progress over his 2 years, because it wasn't necessarily his strength maybe in that last season, and now it's pretty clear cut. He's the guy everyone follows now.
Are you convinced he's an NFL quarterback?
It's a good question. I think that's the toughest thing for anyone to predict. So I think NFL GMs even struggle with this. So it's hard for me, as you know. But still, to answer your question, I think yes for a few reasons. One, he's accurate, and people are going to point to his arm strength and things like that, and he doesn't have an elite arm.
No.
He's not elite in the arm strength category. But I don't think in the modern NFL that's that important. I think that's kind of a really overvalued thing. And you see a lot of GMs make some serious mistakes by falling in love with arm strength. I think now it's more about timing and precision and accuracy and being able to hit the open guy, and that's something he's elite at. So I'm not worried about that. He's one of the smartest guys on the field, and not just in the he's an intelligent way, but with these kind of modern offenses, it's the most important thing is being able to read a defense, and so much control is in a quarterback's hand now that you have to make that split decision in the millisecond, and that's one of his best strengths, and that's where I think you're going to see a drop off next year without him. So I think he fits a modern NFL quarterback in all those ways. Then you add in the physicality, he's a big 6'4", 220-pound guy, and you add the toughness, and I imagine people would want to follow him. So I don't know if he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be a very successful NFL quarterback.
Brody Miller, of course, from The Athletic, joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at Brody A. Miller and catch his work there at The Athletic college football side. Now, when one of the things that I do like about him, and this is what I've also learned watching him this year, was the mobility, the craftiness behind the line. Obviously, that play he made against Alabama where he was able to scramble around a little bit and make that huge throw. But he's done that several times this year for LSU. That's one thing that I do love is his pocket presence. After watching Ryan Tannehill here for 7 years, who had no presence whatsoever, this kid, he's got a great feel for the pocket, man.
Absolutely. And I think that's something he had to kind of relearn a bit. I think if you looked at him last year, I think he would admit to you he got a little frantic sometimes in the pocket, because it's worth mentioning LSU had the worst pass protection in the SEC last year, but that's obviously a factor. But he got kind of frazzled a lot because there was just pressure in his face in milliseconds, which you can't really blame him. But at the same time, I think he really had to learn this season how to anticipate pressure, now I think he's as good as anyone I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure his completion percentage under pressure is still like 75%. It's incredible. And I think, he's so good at knowing exactly where the defense is coming from and what it's going to do. And then on top of that, like you said, his ability to make guys miss is almost astounding. Like that Georgia play is the one that's going to be the most famous now. But I think you said it too. If you go back to that Bama game, I think I counted 4 or 5 of plays that weren't that different from that. It was kind of amazing how much against Alabama he was just making guys whiff in the backfield. And then, he is a genuinely good runner. He's a 6'4", 220-pound fullback, because, you look at the Texas A&M game last year, you look at the Georgia game last year, you look at the fourth quarter against Alabama this year, when they don't like to do it often because they don't want to get him hurt because he's too important. But when they let him just loose and just let him just kind of do design runs and go up the middle and be a threat that way, he is very, very difficult to stop because he's a physical presence and he hates sliding. That's his whole thing. He's like Andrew Luck. He does not believe in sliding. So, he's going to get those extra yards.
Well, but I hope he better learn from Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck just got beaten to a pulp in the NFL. Just like Garoppolo, run your ass out of bounds or you're going to blow your knee out, because that's what happened to him last year. Like, dude, what are you doing taking on a tackler? Come on, bro. Come on.
It's true. It's been kind of a playful, joking battle between him and Ed Ogeron, and he is getting better at running out of bounds and whatnot. But because Ed Ogeron's like, we need to protect you. You got to worry. We got to be smart here. And Joe hates it, but he is getting a little smarter at him. I'll give him that.
Yeah, well, hey, Russell Wilson, that's why he is what he is, because he doesn't let you
It's
get
true.
a shot on him. He keeps the play alive, but once he sees he's going to get hit, no, dude, I'm out of this. I'm done. I got Ciara at home. I got to be able to bang her, so I got to stay in healthy shape. So what are you laughing about, Bill? It's true. If you had Ciara at home, you would be taking care of yourself also.
Of course.
All right, so Brody, I was thinking about this, okay, and this is kind of cruel and cold on my part, but I was talking about it on my show last night on Sirius, and I think Joe Burrow needs to pull a John Elway, an Eli Manning. I know he's an Ohio kid, but dude, his career will be over before it starts if he goes to the Bengals. Because I laugh when the people used to say that the Dolphins were tanking. When they're not tanking, they're just building through youth. Real tanking is Mike Brown, who is never, ever committed to winning, will never spend the way he's supposed to spend. That poor kid is going to go over there, and he's never going to win anything because he's never going to have the people around him or the team or the coaching staff that he needs to do that. Would Joe Burrow do something like that?
I do not think he would. I just don't think. I think it's hard to do that in the modern era because I think there's so much of like you would get such a bad reputation for that really fast. I really think the public would turn on him. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I know it isn't a great situation, but when you think, Zach Taylor has a really good reputation as a head coach. And I mean, as much as I know they're not winning and all those things, I mean, the word you hear out of Cincinnati is you hear a lot of really positive things about Zach Taylor as a coach. The roster is just kind of a mess. And then you think, okay, the offensive line was pretty bad this year. Well, it is worth mentioning they took a top 10 pick on Jonah Williams, left tackle from Alabama, who was the consensus best O-lineman in the draft last season. And, he just missed the whole season, got injured in the summer. But, okay, now all of a sudden you have if healthy, it's a huge if, but if healthy, an elite left tackle. And who knows what's going to happen with things like A.J. Green and whatnot. But you like Taj Boyd's a good player, Tyler Eifert, I don't know. I mean, I just don't think it's like an utter disaster there. I don't. But, I mean, that's
It's
probably
Mike
a little
Brown.
naive. But
It's Mike Brown.
Oh, I know. Trust me. I'm raised. My family was raised Bengals fans. I'm well aware of the problems there. But yeah, at the end, to answer your question, though, I just can't imagine he would do that.
Yeah, and by the way, just a little nugget, my man. Eli and Elway forcing themselves out. Both ended up with 2 titles. I'm just saying, because the Colts in those days were like the Bengals. The Chargers were a joke, obviously, for many years. It's the Spanos family's a joke as it is. And so that's why I feel terrible for the kid. He's going to end up in Cincinnati, and nobody ever wins anything significant in Cincinnati because of that guy being the owner. And I know he's an Ohio kid. He looks like such a great kid that he wouldn't do this. But I got to tell you, man, if I'm his agent, I might say, Joe, it worked out really well for John Elway and for Eli forcing themselves from not being drafted by a bad franchise. And you and I know A.J. Green's not sticking around. The reason why he's probably hasn't come back towards the end of this season, it's because why would he risk more injury for something that means nothing? He's off and running from here on out. He's kind of given enough to Cincinnati. I feel bad for the kid, and his pro career hasn't even started. Sucks.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. I'm not. Yeah.
I knew I was going to throw you a curveball on that one that you would never see coming, because a lot of people aren't talking about that, at least not now. Eventually, it's going to come up because it's Mike Brown, because it is what it is. Overall, when you look at this kid, is this the best quarterback in LSU history?
Oh, it's not even remotely close. I mean, that's kind of what makes him so significant here, and why we'll have a statue when it's all said and done, is because it's the one position LSU could just never figure out for all these decades. And I mean, I think we're at the point now where I think it's becoming a real argument he's the best LSU football player, period, ever. I mean, it would have been him or Billy Cannon, the 1959 Heisman winner, or maybe Tyrann Mathieu at his best was up there. But I mean, if Joe Burrow keeps doing, first off, even if he doesn't win the title, but I mean, it's possible he will. I mean, because it's not even just how. First off, he's the best quarterback in SEC history statistically. I mean, he is one of the best quarterbacks ever. And then you add in the significance of doing it at LSU and the significance of taking LSU's offense out of the Stone Age and into the modern era, and kind of probably setting a template to help them for the next few decades and whatnot. I think I think it's a pretty realistic argument that he's the 2 or 3 best LSU players to ever step the field there.
Brody, can you imagine if he was actually a few years earlier with that LSU team that had Odell Landry and Jeremy Hill in the backfield? Can you imagine with those 3 cats and this guy?
Hey, man.
Because you made such a great line there to bring him from the Stone Age to modern. That was the thing that we would all freak out. It's like, dude, LSU's always loaded with talent, but they can't find a damn quarterback to throw to people. If they did, it would be scary. And guess what? They finally found the guy, and it's scary now. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, my only counter to that is the receiving core is probably better right now than that 2013 was, because Jamar Chase is just as good in college as those guys were, and they actually have 3 of them now with Chase, Jefferson, and Marshall. I actually think this one's better, which is crazy to say.
That's awesome. But remember, also Hill in the backfield. That's why I was saying that.
And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an All-American.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that was a hell of a team, man, and I mean a hell of an offense that could have been really special with the right guy pulling the trigger. That would have been a lot of fun to watch. Brody, how healthy are they? Are they missing anybody for the bowl game?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the news of the week this whole week that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, their superstar running back, is dealing with a hamstring injury right now, and his status is still questionable. Nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen there. You know, Ed Ogeron said yesterday that they still don't know, but then Steve Ensminger, the offensive coordinator today, might have loose lips, actually kind of said that he is going to play. So, yeah, no one really knows, but it's also the interesting thing of LSU's a 2-touchdown favorite here. Do you push him if it's iffy? That's kind of the debate. But other than that, the team's pretty healthy.
Yeah, don't push him. I'm sure the second stringer will be just fine and more than enough for that team because they're absolutely loaded. How was the recruiting class going in? Because I would imagine LSU, with all the success that they're having right now, they've got to be red hot in recruiting. How's that gone?
Yeah, they have a top 5 class in the country. They're number 4 right now. They got a pretty loaded group of skilled players coming in. They got a top 50 receiver. They got the highest rated tight end in 24/7 sports history. They got a pretty deep group of defenders. It's they missed on some top guys like Jordan Burch and one other receiver. So they were close to having the number 1 class in the country. So they're a little disappointed there as they missed out on a few top guys. But grand scheme of things are pretty good.
So who's taking over for Joe Burrow? Because he's got big shoes to fill.
Right now, it looks like Miles Brennan is the next guy up. He's been waiting in behind him for 2 years. He's got a really good arm. He grew up in an RPO system. He's no Joe Burrow and nobody is, but he's got a really good arm. He's a relatively smart kid, and they're going to be so loaded at all the skill positions next year that you probably only need him to be decent for LSU to have a good offense next year. But it's always possible they look at the grad transfer route, but I'm just not too sure.
Follow my guy Brody Miller, man, on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Keep up with his work at The Athletic, and especially if you're an LSU fan, he is a must-follow. Brody, do me a favor, my brother. The next time you see Joe, lean over, whisper in his ear, tell him, don't go to Cincinnati. Don't go to Cincinnati. That's all. Just tell him no Mike Brown is a good thing.
All right, man.
You got it, baby. You be good.